Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Soul Calibur 2, and here's your intro.
Transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold. Soul Calibur 2.
Okay, and that's the only intro that the arcade version has. This is actually, as I'd mentioned in some of my other videos, the version D for the arcade version, which more or less is a tweaked version. So, like, there are some moves that were fixed and some balancing tweaks. Now, as you've seen in my other videos, there are several modes here. You can do your conquest, survival, time attack, as well as training. We're just going to do arcade mode here. And, of course, compared to the home versions, the arcade version is lacking characters like Song Mina and a bunch of others who were, of course, added since this came first. The arcade version of this game came out in 2002. It wasn't until late 2003 that you got your console releases. Of course, since this is the
I'm through with words.
This is the North American region version, it's going to have English voice acting instead of the normal Japanese voice acting that you'd have in the Japanese version. And now, one thing I have to say, it might ruin it for a lot of people, but this video is one of the first arcade videos I've played where I honestly did not lose once. So, all I had to do was chop off a bit on the end, and there was the video. I didn't have to worry about taking all my losses out. But, as I was saying, this game wouldn't be released on consoles until 2003. Some of them were fairly late. Like, your regions got various releases. I believe Japan kind of got it earlier in the year, and then North America got a few months later. The funny part is, I actually had purchased Soul Calibur 2 for Xbox much earlier than it got a American release date. So I had it, like, back in the beginning of the year, shortly after it came out in Japan. And then I played that for a good while, and then finally got the American version when that came out. Because what was cool is I had a modded Xbox, so I could actually play the Japanese version. Now, a lot of people will know this, but I'll mention this anyway, but when the game came out on consoles, you got Spawn on the Xbox version, Link on the GameCube version, and Heihachi Mishima on the PlayStation 2 version. And this game runs on the Namco System 246 board, which, as I'd mentioned in numerous videos, is based on the PlayStation 2. Which I know a lot of people at the time when this game was announced for arcades were really mad that they didn't base it on like a stronger hardware. But considering the texture detail, the model detail of this game, especially considering what you're seeing right now, I don't think releasing this on 246 was really an awful idea. It looks very nice in my opinion. Everything just looks really sharp. And I know a lot of people were just like, yeah, PS2, it's such a weak system, now that it's like a couple years old. And I definitely like the versus screen in this. You get like a nice bust of each of the characters, and it just looks really nice.
Show me what you've got.
And that's one thing you'll notice in this game, is the stages, the character models, they're all just really detailed, and as I just mentioned, the textures look really nice too. It gives them some really nice detail. And the final release of Soul Calibur 2 was Soul Calibur 2 HD Online for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. That didn't happen until the year 2003, so like the 10th anniversary of the console release, you got your HD Online version for your quote-unquote modern consoles at the time, which at the time of this recording, it's one generation later, and for all I know, you could be listening to this years later when Xbox 9 or PlayStation 12 are out. Now, I know I'd probably mentioned this a few times in some of my earlier videos, but initially the English voices really grated on me a lot. I didn't really like them. I thought they sounded like terribly awful. But it's one of those weird things, like after a while, you hear them for such a while, they just don't bother you anymore. And now that's one thing that they did in Soul Calibur 2. They kind of try to phase out some of the characters. So they kind of tried to get rid of the ones who more or less copied one another. So they got rid of Rock because he was a lot like Astaroth. They got rid of Song Mina because she was a lot like Keelik. They got rid of Sophia because she was a lot like Cassandra, you know, their sisters. But the funny part is a good deal of those characters that they got rid of, they just brought back for the console version because a lot of fans were kind of outraged that their favorites were replaced with, like, imitators. Which is something that, like, when I think of that, yeah, Soul Calibur 5 comes in mind, because that game, like, terribly did that. Like, you get rid of Song Mina and Keelik. Well, Keelik is still there, but he's just kind of like a man-only Edgemaster, so he only imitates the male characters. Then you get this, like, ridiculously silly character called Shiba, who kind of does the staff style. But it looks like even this early on in the series history, they were trying to do that already.
Versus Charade.
And now, if you didn't know already, Charade is your Edgemaster / Inferno character. And in all versions of Soul Calibur 2, Inferno's only playable. Well, he's not playable. He's only actually a character you can verse in the single-player mode. So that's another thing where they kind of replaced a long-known character with something new. And I can honestly tell you, of all the characters in Soul Calibur history who are like your randomly switch between different character styles, I'd have to say Charade is the least memorable because it's just like an eyeball and a bunch of sticks. Whereas like Edgemaster, I like Edgemaster. Don't mind Inferno. I don't even mind Ulsadan from Soul Calibur 3, but yeah, Charade's just kind of very bland. It's like a cheap imitation of Inferno, but just not as fiery. And the funny part is when you mod the console version, if you put any of the characters like over Charade, and you don't like change a certain file, they'll actually still have that like flaming aura effect around them. I used to do that with Xianghua. She'd have this like blue aura around her in her C1 costume because that was kind of blue, so it actually went quite well with the effect. And I still could remember when I first played Soul Calibur, I was like, wait, Yoshimitsu, he's a Tekken character. That's just so weird. And I could remember thinking, it's so great having this character now finally able to actually use his sword, except for like a couple of silly slashing moves here and there. And they, of course, brought a lot of the moves from Tekken over, like the Flea, Door Knocker, the Stone Back Fist, Stone Foot, and all those moves. The Death Copter. It's just a lot of his special moves, but his like general attacks are now more or less your swordplay type moves. Of course, he still has his kicks. But I definitely think that was something that was very fitting of the character, and it really was a thing that the character really needed for a while there.
Battle 2. Fight.
My big question is maybe if down the road, if they ever make any other characters. I think what would be really cool is if they like brought Kunimitsu into Soul Calibur, because just like Yoshimitsu, she has I believe they're her kunais that she actually uses, and I think she'd be really cool in a weapons-based fighting game. You hear me, Namco? You should really do this and stuff. And in the original Soul Calibur, Xianghua and Huang Soul Yun were both like very similar, whereas the only real difference in Soul Calibur, I think the throws were different.
Versus Keelik.
I'm gonna let you hear this.
Keelik,
You can't fight this with strength alone. Please understand, Xianghua.
I can't let you go any further.
Is there no other way?
Battle 1.
And as I was saying is the difference between Huang Soul Yun and Xianghua in the original Soul Calibur was like the A and B like sword twirl and the throws. I think those were the only real differences. They had a couple of like unique moves here and there, but pretty much they were almost the same character. I really found it weird that they totally got rid of Huang Soul Yun in favor of Yun Sung, who's kind of like some guy who kind of sort of does the same style. Huang Soul Yun wasn't like officially / unofficially brought back until he was added as a bonus character in the PlayStation 2 version of Soul Calibur 3, and then he was made into a full character in the Soul Calibur 3 Arcade Edition on this same arcade hardware, as I had shown you in my other video. And that's one thing that I love in these Soul Calibur games, is when you defeat a character and you keep on like doing like that overkill,
It's too dangerous.
they just do that like really over the top I'm dying scream. I just always thought that was hilarious. And this is one of those scenes. I love the use of like the dynamic lighting and everything. How everything just gets that glow to it.
This time.
That effect is really nice in this game, especially during this battle, because
The seal was broken.
all of this light from Inferno just has this really nice glow on the whole geometry of your character.
Final battle.
And of course, just like Soul Calibur 3 Arcade Edition, here Inferno is only a non-playable boss character. And this is the only match in the whole game which is a single round, but it's kind of a 3-stage single round where you have to basically defeat Inferno 3 times with like each third of its life. So it's kind of like a really cool concept here. It gives it like a more dynamic feeling that it's not just like, say, another fight. And then the final one here looks like Sophidia. So many times I play this, as I said, I always get, if any character I get defeated by, it was Inferno. And as I said, I was just very surprised that I did not get defeated by Inferno here. And then, of course, you get the Soul Calibur sword.
Evil must be destroyed.
And I'll let you read
It's the only way.
Xianhua's ending here without me blabbing a mile a minute. And I really think it's cool that even though this is an arcade game, it still has those like little ending parts for each of the characters' arcade modes, which unfortunately a lot of like the arcade games, considering like just like this one, a lot of them came before their console counterparts. They didn't have any kind of ending except for the whole rank in, because when you had your local arcade, a lot of people kind of had that whole bragging rights thing going on where you just wanted to have like you as the top name. So little more than you have the highest score was kind of your goal in playing this arcade game. So it's kind of nice to have a little thing here where you can see how each of the characters ends their journey here. And of course that all carried on to the home versions of Soul Calibur 2 as well, so it really tied it nicely together. And of course they added a bunch more modes for the home versions, but of all arcade games I've played, I definitely say Soul Calibur 2 here for an arcade game has the most modes. As I said, there was there was a total of 5 modes. You have your arcade mode, your survival, your conquest, which I've showed in one of my other videos, and I will be releasing another video that shows a couple of my conquest plays I recorded with this gameplay. And then, of course, you have your 5-minute training. Let's see, I said arcade, conquest, survival, 5-minute training. But yeah, it's really cool that you just have so many, and I believe these credits are the same for all versions. That's why it shows the Japanese version. But yeah, you just don't really see, like, until you get your home release of a game, all the different modes that are available in Soul Calibur here. So it's really nice to have that as an option. But yeah, Soul Calibur 2 as an arcade game, it's a really good game. If you already have like a System 246/System 256 anyway, and you can pick up the disc and dongle for cheap enough, I would highly recommend it because it really is a good piece to your arcade collection. Although, unless you're a really devoted fan of Soul Calibur like myself, you probably wouldn't want to buy the hardware just for this game. I always say that the best game on the System 246 is the Soul Calibur 3 Arcade Edition, because it just has a lot of stuff the home doesn't. But as I said, if you have this hardware anyway, it doesn't hurt to have the arcade version of this game as well, because as I said, it's a great game. It looks really clean, it looks really nice. It probably looks exactly like the PS2 version, but I just like that I can play the original arcade game in my home, and there is no emulator that currently runs this game at the time of recording this in the early 2015 here. And of course, here's your game over, because it's not that you lost, it's just that, simply enough, the game is over because there's no other enemies to face. But this has been another Game Nexus Arcade video, and I shall see you later in my next video. Bye.